Today we're going to talk about energy and what do we mean by that? Well, I think we're going to open up the discussion for how energy is everywhere. It's in every living and non-living thing. So we're going to talk about in our own experiences how our energy affects others, how others' energy can affect us, how the world's energy plays out, and just even like what it is or what we feel it is in our own experiences, and the best ways to be one with your own energy and recognize what's not your energy and just what it is in general. So it's a pretty big discussion. I feel like everybody is familiar with the word energy, but maybe they don't really know how to describe it. So we're going to kind of get into the weeds with it and hopefully give a little more clarity for everybody. So let's get into it. Carol, why don't you talk about what's your definition of energy?
I knew you were going to call me about that because it was
Yep.
like, what's my definition of energy? What does it mean to me?
hmm
You might think of it as your aura or your essence or just your being, your spirit. I think there's a lot of synonyms you could put around it to try to explain it. But to me, a person's energy is how they project themselves to the world, how they project themselves to the others. What you put out to others is your energy. I think there's internal energy and external energy. Your internal energy might be completely opposite of what you're projecting. Like maybe you have a lot of self doubts and inside you're very anxious, but to the world, you're going to project an energy of, oh no, I'm very confident. I'm not so anxious after all, but they're obviously very different. So I feel like energy needs to be about both of those things, the internal and the external, but mostly what people see is what you project externally.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I do agree with that. Like people project certain energy, but even when people project a certain energy, let's say they put on a happy face or something, the energy can be felt differently by others. And it's just so interesting to me that you kind of go back to self and how we all perceive things in our own way. And I think there's different levels of people's own individual perception of what the energy is around them and with people they like because we're all different. So some people may get along better with other people's energy than somebody else might not like that person at all. Like as a whole, even if we project a certain thing, I feel like there's stuff that is inherent to us as an individual person that could be felt differently depending on who you're around or what you're around. Even in a building, if you're in a building, for example, that has had a lot of sad things happen, somebody who's more sensitive to energy might feel some of that sadness, whereas somebody else who's just staying in their own lane and not really aware of it may not sense it at all. But it doesn't mean it's not there. It's still there. Everything carries an
Yeah,
energy.
I agree. I was thinking too, as you were starting to talk about it, that yes, I can try to project that confidence, but the more sensitive person is going to feel the confidence and the underlying anxiety. But there's going to be some
Yeah.
people who don't feel that at all. People, like you said, have different levels of sensitivity. It's when we're doing psychic readings on a person, what we're doing is feeling your energy. We're feeling your real energy, not just what you project, but what else is inside of you. Some people are good at reading people. You don't have to call yourself a psychic, but you all know somebody, or for yourselves, who's really good at reading people and who's really good at knowing who a person is the minute they meet them.
You grow up and you hear people saying you cut the tension in that room with a knife, something like
hmm
that, right? So in other words, they're feeling the energy in the room, and everybody can feel energy because like that, you can walk into a room and you can feel something has happened. Nobody
Yeah.
has to say anything to you there, and that's almost instinctual to you. That because, and I think it's instinctual to everyone. Maybe people are tuned into it more than others, but to me, it's a survival thing as well for being a human. It was a lot more important, for example, when we were living out in the wilderness. You had to be able to feel the energy of the environment and know if there was going to be danger or something like that. So to me, it's ingrained in us. It's part of being human, but it's just
Yeah.
whether you're open to it or more receptive to it or not than compared to others.
Yeah, I like that point because you're right. You could walk into a room, cut the tension with a knife, and it's how we perceive it. And it's so interesting. You ever have like time with friends when you have you're at a party or something and you're chatting, and everybody's perception is different of the energy they received from that. Like you may feel like, oh, that was a great person. I love the story. And the other person might say, oh, I feel like she sounded a little snooty, right? Like, so the energy, our perception of the energy we're receiving is like a mark on our path of growth, like of how we're understanding it as a person. But there is an energy there. And so I always think about like, because we're all different and people take things different ways, even though there's a collective energy around it, maybe at the certain point in one person's journey is more aware of the happiness and kindness because they're feeling more happy and kind. And somebody's more aware of maybe when the little lady friend was talking a little more snooty. Well, maybe that person's journey that's perceiving that way is the energy that way is like having her own issues with being persnickety or whatever it is. So, energy is always moving and it's always changing, but individually we have our own perception of it. But I think as our understanding and awareness grows of it, we realize it in like the bigger picture for maybe understanding energy of our friend who maybe took it in the happiness way, and then understanding of the other friend or the self as you took it in a persnickety way, and then being able to feel into the core of what that energy actually was and what it was teaching you, through that. And maybe that's a little bit too far in the weeds for most people because as your awareness grows, your perception grows to energy. But the point is, energy never dies. Like it's always around and it's always moving and transitioning. If you think of a song, it carries a lot of energy. Like the vibrations of music carry a lot of energy. It can make you feel sad, it can make you feel happy. And then often you tie it to your own experiences and your own memories, and you feel something different than maybe your friend would. But, there's a tone to it of an overall certain energy.
I have a sign in my office that says music is what feelings sound like. And you guys know I really love listening to music, and it definitely can change your mood. Try listening to happy and not being happy. There are songs that carry energy with it, like you said. Then maybe go listen to the Anna Kendrick version of True Colors, and that can really make you feel a different kind of way, right? That can change your energy too. I was thinking as you were talking also that even if you're not good at in general reading somebody's energy, usually somebody you're very close to, right off the bat what their energy is like that day. And you can hear it even in their voice. You don't even have to be in their presence, but you can hear it since they call you up. You can immediately say, well, what's wrong? I know something's wrong just by the energy, the sound of your voice, because you know somebody that well. So typically, like kids and your partners, your best friends, people you're close to in your family, you're going to recognize their energy, their moods much more easily than you would maybe the general public or a stranger. So some people are naturally in tune with each other like that because you've been in each other's presence so much. You recognize the very subtle shift when they have a shift in their own energy. And we don't even always recognize that about ourselves, do we? When we have a shift until we get to that state of having shifted. So, for example, maybe you look at the news and you don't like how it sounds. And then all of a sudden you find yourself feeling kind of moody about it. You didn't notice the shift at first, but it had some kind of effect on your energy. So everything that we do and everybody we interact with has some kind of influence on how we feel and how our energy is.
We are energy, and
Mm-hmm.
then our thoughts, the way I think of it is kind of like the manifesting. You're vibrating, you're a particular energy, the vibration is an emotion, whatever it is. So, like that, I could be happy at a certain vibration, and then I go and read some news that annoys me, and then suddenly my mood changes. I'm then at a different vibration. So, in other words, I haven't changed. I still look the exact same. There's no difference, right? The energy existed there the whole time. The only thing that changed was the frequency of the energy, the vibration of the energy. And I think what you said there is good that that's something that's worth learning, learning to recognize your own energy and how that's changing and what makes it change. Because often we
Mm-hmm.
get caught on it's changed right now. and then we can't figure out what changed it. So someone could have said something an hour ago that initially set off that train that then you
Hmm.
started thinking, why did they say that? That's really unfair. Actually, maybe I am. And then 100 thoughts later, you might have one, let's say, memory that then triggers a particular emotion. But sure, the whole
Hmm.
sequence of events started an hour ago. But if you're tuned into your own energy, you can become aware of that.
Yeah, I like that because everything is energy. Like you said, your thoughts start it, your emotions amplify it, and then your action increases whatever you're focused on with that energy. But at the end of the day, you're still energy. So I think it's helpful. I liked what you had said about, I don't remember how you actually said it, but you alluded to knowing what energy is yours, compared
Hmm.
to like what you're taking on from somebody else. So I always like in these episodes to like think of practical ways so we could tell people to recognize their own energy and not take on the world's energy or your best friend's energy, if they're in a bad place or whatever. And so there are a couple things that I think of offhand and really like movement, movement, getting up and like just shaking yourself off or washing your hands, water, like anything, any little thing that can take your attention off of that focus could cause a small shift to right your own energy. I'm always trying to figure out, was that mine or theirs? And this is earlier in my spiritual journey, especially with the work we do. We're like, is that my feelings or is that so and so's feelings? And like my daughter, I always tell her she has an open window. You have a window with the screen on it. Some people's window is half open to emotions. Some people's is wide open. Some people has no screen at all and they're taking everybody's stuff on. Like as a person, some people are just wired different. But one little thing people can do is like say their own name to themselves. Like, oh, I'm Tracy, I'm Tracy, I'm Tracy. Saying your own name triggers who you are because you know yourself. And so you don't say it out loud, but if you're saying it to yourself, then recognizing in yourself like how you feel about yourself. And then you can start to notice when something wasn't yours, like if you're in a stressful moment. It's just like a key word that you're most familiar with you. So if you bring it back to you and say your own name, it sounds silly, but it can get you back to like, oh yeah, that's me. And that feels not like me. So then you can kind of build on that to learn to separate other people's energy from your own when needed. Because, especially as spiritual workers or people of faith or people on a spiritual journey, you're wanting to help, you're wanting to fix things for people. And one of the biggest things you can do for yourself and for others is to know what's yours and know what's theirs so that you can be effective in helping them through you being more here and present with yourself.
I was just thinking how I'm really good at changing my own energy. It's usually not for the better. Like I'm talking myself into feeling angry or feeling sad or feeling whatever way because, like you said, maybe I don't recognize the trigger or maybe I do, but then I've allowed myself to let it change my energy. So
Mm.
that's why it's so important being able to recognize when that happens so you can change it back to something and not stew in the muck, let's say. We don't want to be in that kind of energy. But it's easy to get to the muck and to stay there if we don't do something to change it. And I wanted to add to Tracy's list of things to do to change it is going outside for me. Having some sunshine is very important. And I think is a great way to change the energy. But also you can just go watch some kind of video of cute little puppies or
Yeah,
something that makes you laugh.
the best. Yep.
So if I'm aware of me being energy and that I can influence my own energy and that other people can if I allow them to. So everybody's energy, everything in the universe is energy, but is there anything interesting about that?
Can you be aware of how it affects other people? How does your energy affect somebody else's? And then that kind of affects the way that the relationship will be between the two of you because your energy is going to mix or it's not, but it's going to be there together in some kind of way. So, how can you change your energy to be, let's say, more compassionate with somebody else or more patient with somebody else? Our energy affects how we relate with other people, which affects the way we live.
We should talk too about like the energy of the world, not just people, but like
Mhm.
a collective energy because everything carries energy. Like I said, even if you're in a certain place like that you travel to or whatever, there's a history and energy, and that's always held there. And there's a lot to learn from energy if you are open to feeling into it or sensing it in some way. I feel like the more we can understand that everything holds energy, the more compassionate we can be, you know?
Well, the reason I like energy as well, and let's say have a focus on it, is because of working with people. I'm conscious of their energy and how that might influence others. And the same vice versa. How does the energy of others, how do you allow that to influence your energy?
Yeah.
And we speak to it before where you can't control anything on the world, right? You can't control any of that other energy, but the one energy you can control is your own energy. So your own
Mhm.
thoughts, your own feelings, your own emotions. I feel that's a work in progress. At least it is for me anyway. So like I came to that discovery, I came to that conclusion, but like it's something you have to learn and develop where you don't allow the energy of the world to impact your energy. And I'll give you a perfect example where I can go and read a news article and then that'll annoy me. So therefore it has impacted my energy, right? It has
Mhm.
changed my mood. So you can tie your energy very much into your own self-development. So it's
Mhm.
almost like you self-develop while exploring what you are and how it changes and fluctuates, which in essence is the energy that you are. And Carl, I'm sure obviously you see that as well between a medium and a sitter and a teacher and a student. There's an energy transfer in any setting.
Absolutely, in any setting. In class, there's going to be people who are similar to your own personality, people who are different, people who are in a sleepy mood that day, a good mood that day, bad mood, whatever it is. There will be some kind of energy exchange between the two of you. And you have to not let your sitter's energy affect your energy because you're the medium doing the reading. You're also trying to connect with the energy of spirit because they are energy too. And so you've got this kind of three-way thing going on. You have to learn to detach from emotions of it and just learn to give the reading, to give the information, and not worry about what somebody else's energy is in that moment, other than paying attention to your client's needs. I'm talking about making sure that the person who's in, let's say, a bad mood and you guys don't get along anyway, and that doesn't happen in our class, but let's say that happened, you would have to be able to still do the job, right? Do the reading without letting that change you. But a lot of people struggle with that as part of their self-development.
On a wider note, like energy is everywhere and everything. And if you think about that, like there's really no limits to what energy has done. Energy provides our lights on, it provides everything, it provides life, and it comes in so many different forms. And so I feel like energy is a big subject. We can go in a million different directions with it when you realize that absolutely everything and anything is energy, including the piece of paper on your desk. And
Mhm.
everything is part of the bigger picture, and everything can be felt or recognized as energy if you allow it, which then has an effect on like it all works in harmony. It's like a web, it's like this giant web of all things connected through energy, and it's pretty beautiful, I think.
Because every living thing has energy for sure, and non-living things too. Like you said, you were talking about a building or a place might have energy, but park has a different energy than a school, has a different energy than a church, has a different energy than a cemetery. So locations in and of themselves carry that energy, but objects carry energy too. So if you have your grandmother's wedding rings, there's a certain energy around that because she wore them every day for years and years and years. So part of her energy will be entwined with those rings, and you would might feel that if she hands them down to you and you wear them. And I feel like that's why we get sentimental about those family heirlooms or even silly things that people have passed down because there's an energy that they hold for you that changes it in a positive way, which is why we like to hold on to those things.
Do either of you think that if you have something of somebody's, let's say, for example, in your example with your grandmother's wedding ring, do you think if you, as the person that then is wearing grandmother's wedding ring around your neck because you love it or whatever, and it holds those memories, but it obviously carries a lifetime of memories for your grandmother, do you think that unless you're aware of all of that energy, do you think you take on some of the things you're not paying attention to in that energy? Like maybe I don't know, maybe if you carried something of your uncle's and he had like a time in his life when he did a lot of bad things and but you have funny memories because he was your person, but nobody else liked him. Do you feel like that energy is still in there? I ask this because, you guys know me, like everything I have is like was somebody's and I love the history of that. I love embracing like other people's things and I don't feel like it affects me unless my mind puts my perception on it that way. You know what I mean? So, in the grand scheme of energy, and it's all things, it does maybe hold a negative energy from all these people's past things I had. Maybe they had a fight over this little dresser, and now it's right here behind me, and I love it, right? It still holds the energy if I tapped into it of what maybe had happened in its previous life as the dresser. But my attention isn't focused in that way because I'm putting my new energy in it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. So how do you feel like that plays out? I sorry if that's an obscure question, but
I feel like your new energy and the energy of your house and where that dresser is does then become intertwined with the energy of how it was. But it's going to be a stronger energy, in my opinion, of what's going on right there, right now, because your energy around it is also affecting it, and you're having a
yeah.
positive energy around it. So it's taking on that positive energy. And I think, yeah, sure, you very well you could go back into that kind of, ooh, this is creepy. I don't want it around me. But for me, if you're going to have it and you choose to have it, then it's not affecting you in a negative way because you want that and it makes you happy. And if uncle's
Yeah.
whatever it was, if uncle's
Right.
object,
Right.
it makes you happy, then I don't think those negative energies creep into your own without you knowing it. You are choosing to focus your attention and your intention on this being a positive experience.
Yeah, I was thinking because I was in a residence room at my job the other day, and there's a couple residence room, and I would go in their rooms and speak with them, and they tell me things about their life. But before they even told me things, like I felt myself getting very choked up in their room. And so I had to go get with my own energy to figure out, is this me or is this them? And I realized like shortly after, maybe the next day or two, because it took me a while to sort out because I'm not used to being around in this situation, let's say. But I was trying to figure out what was my energy and what was hanging around that I was noticing. And if I was hanging around noticing the energy in a certain way, there's obviously a reason in my own story that I'm noticing it. And both times it was something reflected of sadness from my own story that tied to also their story. And so in reflection, I could understand the energy. So now when I go in their room, it's not the same, but I had to experience the energy even before they even opened their mouth to bring my attention to where my energy needed to be, right? So it
Mhm.
energy is very powerful, but it's also like how you're focusing, even like if you're willingly or unwillingly. If it's something sensitive to you and you don't think you're focusing on it, you may feel it and then have to sort through it, but it's always there.
People's understanding and experience of energy can change, right? Because, well, it has for me. So, like that, if someone can't feel energy in the way Tracy walked into the room the other day and felt the energy and the way it impacted her, it's just that maybe you haven't made yourself aware to energy in that sense, right? Because intention as well, like, has a lot to do with it. We were
Mhm.
saying in the manifesting episode, where Carol was making me trip down the stairs after the recording.
Yeah. Did that
Remember
happen, by
we?
the way? Yeah.
No, that didn't.
No.
You're lucky. But in the same thing, right? You can have bad intentions for me. I don't care. Nothing's going to happen because they literally bounce off me and go back to you because that's my energy around that whole thing.
Right, right,
Mhm.
right. Hmm.
Even in the sense of, you hear ghost stories, and I just seen the word ghost behind Tracy. So I was like, I'm gonna bring it up. That understanding of energy, and I told you this story, I think, before, where someone says, my house is haunted. And then you're like, what is it? And they're like, there's this girl constantly down the bottom of the stairs. And it's like, what's she doing? She's swinging off the banister. I was like, but does she do anything else? No, that's all she does. But it's terrifying. Why would it be terrifying? To me, all that is an energy imprint. So, in other words, like in the house's history, a little girl lived there. she swung off the banister every day she got out of bed, she went down, she was probably joyful, happy, child. And that person is somewhat perceptive to energy and they can just see, let's say, what I would call an energy imprint in the house. So to me, it's just a different level of understanding, but then how you take it comes back, right? So I look at that and say it's just an energy imprint. There's not even a being there. There's no spirit there. But of course, the person saw it and immediately thought, oh, there's a ghost in the house. I need to be fearful, right? And then they run with that narrative instead, rather than being open to energy and being curious and then saying, what's that? I wonder why does that keep repeating? Why is it always the same thing? In other words, get inquisitive about it and you almost remove any fear that you have around energy and stuff as well. So that's what I'm saying, that my understanding of energy has changed. The more open I am to it, the more different ways I'll get to see energy. And it's the same thing, like you said earlier on, that there's an energy imprint on a ring. We know psychometry. We can pick up an object and read a person's energy from that object. But yet, if that's not in your understanding, you would never think that you can do that.
You don't just feel energy, you can see it too. For not everybody does that, but you can develop that ability to see the energy. But around people, we have an auric field, an aura. Some people can see that. You might see it as colors, or you might just see it as a general kind of white light. Some people see it as sparkles, or maybe shadows, or whatever kind of way. But it is possible to do more than just feel it.
And you could send it, you're talking about projecting it, but you can send it. We send healing, like call it healing, but some people call it prayer. However you want to frame it, you can send that energy and it can get stronger collectively with more people participating in it. And so, yeah, energy is very powerful. So you can get on the same wavelength of energy with others and send it for in a good way. And I guess you could send it in a negative way, but like Anthony said, unless you're subscribing to that negativity, you don't have to receive it.
What would you suggest for someone to start exploring energy?
I think that the easiest thing to do is to be around people. Maybe go to the mall or something like that, or party and walk around and just even stand next to somebody. How does that person make you feel? Or can you feel their energy at all? If that doesn't work, then you just begin by meeting somebody, having a conversation, but feel the energy of who they are before they start talking. So it's kind of like when somebody walks into a room, you immediately sense that, oh, that person's really high energy. Gosh, they're all over the place. Or you might sense, ooh, she's really shy. I can just feel that coming off of her. Get used to exploring that. What is the energy of a person? And then talk to them a little bit, get to know them, see if you're right about that. You can also do that with animals in a safe way. If you don't want anybody to know, you're kind of trying to feel their energy.
Use the dog.
But again, if we go back to watching people at the mall or just sitting near them, just kind of feel the energy of somebody. You might not get validation of that, but you're getting used to being sensitive to feeling somebody's energy. So that's how you could start with people. With objects, you could go to a thrift store, antique store, whatever, and just kind of put your hand on something and just feel the energy of the piece of that. Again, you might not have validation for it, but you're becoming sensitive. You're training yourself to pay attention to what is the energy of this object. So those would be a couple of places to start.
Yeah, and I think another good way to explore energy and recognizing energy, whenever you're in the moment of whatever you're doing, ask yourself, what does this feeling in this moment remind me of from any of my past experiences? Because, if you're trying to figure out, is this a loving energy I feel? If you're like bare bones trying to start from the beginning to recognize your own energy and your own feelings, I think the things that most people remember about their own energy are the biggest experiences. So, what experience in your life does the energy you're feeling now in this moment bring up for you so that you can kind of marry that with, oh, this is the energy of love for me. It feels like this. This is the energy of sadness for me. It feels like this. So if you can get yourself your own marker points for you as a person, then you're going to start recognizing, have your own labels for what the energy you're experiencing from others is, which then can open the door to better understanding of other people, other experiences, other things.
I think the takeaway for all of this is just we need to be aware of our own energy, how it affects others, how it affects us, and vice versa. How do other people's energy affect us as well? We just need to be in that constant state of awareness so that we can be the best we can be.
So our self energy is really important, right? And recognizing that, but then just to let my inner child out, I have to play
Mm.
with energy, right? So
Mhm.
like that, if a friend calls and if they're wearing something that wasn't originally theirs, I'm like, don't tell me nothing and just give me that object and leave me hold it and see if I can read the energy of it, right? So it's kind of like your thrift shop example, but you kind of have that validation.
Mhm.
The same thing, you can call around to a friend's house and say, is there anything in this room that isn't yours? Oh yeah, there's something over there that's belonged to the roommate. Grant, can I read it and have a go? And I also love going to places of history where you can almost, let's say, step into an environment, feel the energy of it, and you could be looking at one building, but feel that a different building was there in the past, right? You're feeling the history. The history is coming through the energy of that environment. And do that before you go inside, and then you might be shocked to walk inside the door and it'll say, 200 years ago, rather than this building, it was a hospital. And then you might say, "Oh, totally felt a medical energy or something to do with sickness." So to me, that's where you leave the child out to kind of play with energy.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say, one of my favorite energy experiments are in a psychological sense when you're trying to get along with people, understand emotions, and all of those things we've been discussing today. One of the most prominent things I remember that kind of is a good example of what energy does, even if you don't see it. Like, because most people on this earth live in non-awareness and of energies around them, really. I mean, until they need to or learn to. But energy is still there and it's unseen. They have this experiment where there's two plants, right? And they get the same amount of light, the same amount of everything, except for one plant is talked to negatively, like has a tape playing of saying, oh, you're not pretty or whatever, with kind of an
Hmm.
angry voice. And the other plant is like, I love you. And they did this experiment and the plant that got loving thoughts and feelings and emotions sent to it, which you can't see, but it's energy, was thriving. And the one that had negativity and anger put at it was almost dead. So at the end of the day, even if you can't see the energy, it's there. And so that brings us back to why it's so important to know your own energy and to learn how to regulate your own energy and put out the good stuff, and not take on other people's bad stuff, but really just getting back to yourself so that you can radiate the love and loving energy, which is spirit.
Mhm. Even a tone of voice has an
Yeah.
energy, like you said, with the plants, but with people too. Because think about how you react to somebody telling you the phrase in a certain kind of tone, and it can be very innocuous, and maybe they meant it that way, but the tone changes it, and the recipient feels it in a different kind of way. So we have to be aware of energy in that sense too. What are you giving out? What words are you saying? How did you phrase that? And then the emotions that come with those things too. How do you feel when somebody's laughing? How do you feel when somebody's crying? How do you feel when there's anger? That carries energy as well. It's everywhere. If we really sat down and wanted to make a list, it would take us forever to make that list. Where is energy?
So like that, Tracy, with the plants, they did an experiment with water and no music, no sound, nothing. They simply taped a word onto the container that the water was in. So let's say a negative word and a positive word. And the atomic structure of the water changed based on the word that was attached to the container.
Yeah. Wow.
Now that
Yeah.
blew my
Mm.
mind, but then
Hmm.
it also made me suddenly realize I was like, Jesus, hold on a second now. We're 70 to 80% water, our body.
Right.
And I was
Hmm.
like, so your thoughts are literally having an impact on your structure, your energy, how you're made up. And it's not even verbal in the sense that in that experiment, it was simply words. So I always tell people that when I see them drinking water, I'm like, are you thinking happy thoughts when you're drinking that water?
Yeah, I love that.
Right? Because they're holding
Mhm.
on to the glass of water, and literally the thoughts that are going through your head are having an impact on the structure of the molecules in that water. And then you
Yeah.
drink it, and then that merges with the 70 or 80% water that you are.
Yeah.
You can use this as a type of self-development as well, a manifesting thing, right? And then Tracy pulls up a big glass of water.
I know, that's what I was laughing at.
Are you thinking happy thoughts, Tracy? Just put it this way as well. It's a nice little thing to remember to keep you thinking positive. Maybe next time you pick up a cup of tea or a glass of water, you might suddenly become conscious of your thoughts. And that mightn't be such a bad thing, especially when you're then consuming that water.
Yeah. I love it.
We were speaking about thoughts earlier on, and now we just even connected it that your thoughts are impacting the objects you're also holding, right? That vibration is transferring to the
Mhm.
water in this case.
Thoughts carry energy, and you talked about that earlier in the episode, but that's something we definitely need to pay attention to is what are we thinking and what are we sending out with that? Because that does have an energy. It affects others, it affects ourselves. So let's go home tonight with very happy thoughts.
Thoughts, feelings, and all the things. Yeah. Energy is all of it. This discussion, I love all the rabbit hole discussions, and I love how we can get deep, but also try to be relatable to everybody. So to end this, I just say, I liked your example, Anthony, is like when you take a drink of water, just think a positive thought, like that you're nourishing your body to right your energy. So if we can all remember to remind ourselves how to be attentive to our own energy, it's only going to benefit others as well as ourselves. Sheesh, we covered so much. So I hope everybody has great energy this week and puts all the good things into everything they do. And everybody go get a happy plant, drink some good water. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Slide.